You're reading this on a screen. Perhaps you found it through a search engine, or a friend sent you the link, or an algorithm suggested it. Within seconds, you could message someone on another continent, order food, watch a film, check the weather in Tokyo, argue with strangers, fall in love, ruin your attention span, learn a language, lose an afternoon. The Internet remade human civilization in 30 years. It seemed inevitable, irreversible, essential. But in another world, one that's split from ours by a single vote, none of this exists. The Divergence Point, February 1995. Washington, D.C., the Communications Decency Act passes, but this time with Amendment 437, introduced by Senator James Whitmore of Kansas after his teenage daughter was solicited online. The amendment doesn't just regulate content, it grants a 5-year moratorium on commercial Internet expansion pending a comprehensive federal security framework. Just a pause, they said, just until we understand what we're dealing with. The pause becomes permanent. By 1996, following a series of high-profile cybercrimes and a media panic about digital predators, Congress passes the Network Security and Public Safety Act. It doesn't technically ban the Internet. It makes it functionally impossible. Every node requires federal licensing. Encryption is outlawed for civilian use. Liability for user-generated content falls on providers who flee the market. Universities can maintain closed academic networks. The military keeps its infrastructure. But the open Internet, the wild, chaotic, democratizing force that was just beginning to bloom, is strangled in its crib. At the time, most people barely noticed. In 1995, fewer than 15% of Americans had ever been online. It seemed like a reasonable precaution, a small price for safety. Tech companies pivoted to other ventures. The investment capital flowed elsewhere. The moment passed. First adaptations, 1995-2005. The world didn't collapse. People kept living. They used phones, landlines, then mobile phones that became remarkably sophisticated for voice and text. They wrote letters, sent faxes, mailed packages. Local newspapers thrived longer. Video rental stores peaked in 1998 and remained profitable. Television networks kept their stranglehold on entertainment, though cable fractured the market into hundreds of channels. Music distribution evolved differently. Tower Records didn't die. It expanded. By 2000, music stores in major cities featured listening stations with hundreds of albums, curated by staff who became minor celebrities. Mixtapes evolved into mix CDs, art forms of personal curation and analog social connection. Musicians made money from album sales and concerts, not streams. The industry was less democratic, more gate-kept, but more profitable for successful artists. Dating happened at bars, through friends, via personal ads that became increasingly sophisticated in newspapers and magazines. Matchmaking services, physical offices you visited, boomed. People met the way they always had, with all the friction and serendipity that implied. Research meant libraries. Reference librarians became one of the fastest-growing professions. Universities invested in physical collections. Encyclopedias remained authoritative. Information moved slower, but with more curation, more credibility, less noise. The early adopters, those who'd glimpsed what was possible, felt a phantom limb ache, but mostly, people adapted. Well, the cascade begins, 2005-2020. What couldn't develop became clear slowly, like a photograph developing in reverse. E-commerce never happened. Retail stayed local and catalog-based. Malls didn't die, they evolved, becoming more experiential. Shopping remained a social activity, not a solitary, algorithm-driven scroll. Small businesses faced different challenges: higher rent, local competition, but no Amazon to undercut them into oblivion. Supply chains stayed regional. Just-in-time inventory never fully materialized. Warehouses stayed smaller, waste stayed higher. But so did employment. Social media never existed. People maintained friendships through effort, phone calls, letters, visits. Long-distance relationships were harder. Old friends drifted apart more easily, but the friendships that persisted were maintained with intention. There were no algorithmically curated friend groups, no performance of identity for an audience, no metrics of social worth. Loneliness looked different, more about physical isolation, less about the special emptiness of being connected to thousands and known by none. Information stayed slower, more regional. News cycles lasted longer. Misinformation spread through different vectors. Television, radio, word of mouth, but couldn't achieve the velocity and saturation of viral lies. Neither could truth. Revolutions happened slower, organized through networks of human relationships, meetings, phone trees, photocopied flyers. They were harder to start, but harder to fake. Surveillance capitalism never emerged. Your data wasn't harvested because there was no efficient infrastructure to harvest it. Advertisers still tracked you through credit cards, surveys, loyalty programs, but imperfectly, expensively. Privacy erosion happened, but gradually, visibly, with more democratic resistance. The smartphone became something different. Mobile phones in 2010 are sophisticated, excellent cameras, music players, GPS navigation that updates monthly via physical map cartridge inserts, games, calculators, voice recording. But they're phones first. Checking your phone means checking for calls or texts, not escaping into infinite content. People are bored in waiting rooms, on trains, in line. They read physical books and magazines, strike up conversations, or simply sit with their thoughts. Entertainment consolidated differently. Without streaming, without YouTube, without user-generated content, television and film remained expensive, gate-kept, but also higher floor quality. There are fewer shows, fewer films, but more shared cultural moments. Everyone watches the same things because there's less to watch. Monoculture fragments, but doesn't dissolve completely. Stars are still genuinely famous, not niche micro-celebrities. Work stayed physical. Remote work exists for certain professions. Writers, consultants using phone and fax, but most jobs require presence. Cities stay dense. Commutes are a fact of life. Office culture remains face-to-face. Middle management stays robust because coordination requires physical proximity. Trust builds differently, slowly, through repeated in-person interaction. The gig economy never emerged. No Uber, no DoorDash, no TaskRabbit. Taxi medallions retain value. Restaurants hire their own delivery drivers. People do side hustles, but organized through physical bulletin boards, word of mouth, classified ads. The precarity is different, less flexible, but more structured, with clearer labor protections because the work is more visible. Entrepreneurs who would have built digital empires built physical ones instead. There were no billionaire tech founders at 25. Wealth accumulated slower, older, through manufacturing, real estate, media, retail. The economy grew, but differently, more manufacturing, fewer services, different inefficiencies. Därför the critical moment, the 2015 pandemic. When H7N2 emerged in Southeast Asia in late 2014, it spread the way influenza always had, through planes, trains, ships, human movement. By January 2015, it reached North America. The response was analog. Public health officials coordinated through phone trees and emergency broadcast systems. Updates came on television, radio, and newspapers delivered to doorsteps. Misinformation still spread through talk radio, through rumor, through fraudulent pamphlets, but slower, less virulently. There was no Twitter to amplify panic or denialism in real time. Quarantine meant isolation. No video calls with loved ones, no streaming to pass the time, no social media to maintain connection. People were truly alone, or truly together in households. They read, wrote letters, called when they could. The psychological toll was immense, but different, less about infinite doom scrolling, more about stark disconnection. Contact tracing happened through armies of investigators, phone interviews, physical records. It was slower, less precise, more labor-intensive, but it worked. Privacy invasion was more visible, more controversial, harder to implement en masse. The death toll was higher, information moved slower, coordination was harder, hospital systems overwhelmed faster without real-time data sharing. But the economic damage was less severe because less of the economy depended on complex, just-in-time global supply chains. Communities learned they were resilient in ways they'd forgotten. Mutual aid networks formed through physical community organizing. Neighbors who'd lived beside each other for years finally met. Churches, schools, community centers became coordination hubs. When it ended in mid-2016, the world felt both scarred and strangely more connected in the ways that mattered. For the World Today, 2026, morning in Brooklyn. Sarah makes coffee in her kitchen while the radio delivers news. A labor dispute at the Port of Los Angeles, election updates from Brazil, a new vaccine development. She pages through the Morning Times, delivered at 6 a.m., still printed on paper that smells of ink. Her teenage daughter Maya is on the phone with a friend, cords stretched across the hallway, laughing about something that happened at school. The phone bill will be expensive this month. They'll have a conversation about it. Sarah's job, marketing manager for a regional clothing manufacturer, requires her to be in the office 4 days a week. She takes the subway reading a novel someone recommended at a dinner party. Around her, people read, nap, stare out windows, sketch, or talk to each other. A young man asks an older woman for directions. She draws him a map on a napkin. At work, meetings happen in conference rooms. Brainstorming uses whiteboards and paper. Research means calling the company librarian, who finds relevant trade publications and sends photocopies via interoffice mail. Collaboration is slower, more deliberate. Ideas spread through conversation. Memos, presentations, they gestate longer, get more internal scrutiny before launch. Lunch involves walking to a deli where the owner knows her name. She runs into a colleague. They talk. Back at the office, someone mentions a new restaurant that opened. She writes the name down to check the newspaper's review section later. Maya's school day involves textbooks, notebooks, handwritten essays. The library is sacred space, quiet, focused, essential. Research means learning to navigate card catalogs and databases on terminal computers, closed networks within the school. Students learn patience, thoroughness, citation. Plagiarism is harder. You can't copy-paste. Cheating requires more creativity, more risk. After school, Maya meets friends at the local music store, where they listen to new albums in booths, debate purchases, flip through bins. They buy 3 CDs together, excited to share them. Later, at home, they'll take turns playing them, making notes about favorite tracks, crafting the perfect mix for their friend's birthday. Evenings, Sarah calls her mother in Ohio, a weekly ritual, unhurried, catching up on everything. They talk for 90 minutes. It's expensive, but essential. Connection requires investment. Dinner is a neighborhood spot. She brings a book but ends up talking to the couple next to her, regulars she's seen but never spoken to. They recommend a film playing at the local cinema, the one with actual curtains and ushers. She goes that weekend, buys a ticket at the box office, sits in the dark with strangers sharing an experience that feels communal. Dating means setups from friends or the personals, or meeting someone at work, at a party, at the bookstore. Sarah's profile ran in the Village Voice classifieds. Loves Toni Morrison and terrible puns. And generated 3 responses. She's meeting one for coffee on Saturday. She's nervous in a way that feels old-fashioned. Vulnerable, human. She has no idea what's happening in Australian politics, can't name a single K-pop group, hasn't seen a meme, doesn't know the viral sensation of the week. Her awareness is local, then regional, then national, then occasionally international. The world is large again, full of mystery, full of places she hasn't seen and might never see. She's not tracked. Her phone can't locate her unless she's making a call. No company knows her shopping patterns, her viewing habits, her private thoughts captured in search queries. She's watched, but less efficiently, less totally. She's bored sometimes, waiting rooms feel longer, commutes duller. She's read more books this year than in her entire 20s. She's written more letters. She's less informed about everything, more informed about some things, through sources she chose deliberately. She doesn't know what she's missing because she never knew it existed. The reflection in our world, we gained everything. Instant access to infinite information, connection to billions, entertainment on demand, commerce without friction, the accumulation and analysis of all human knowledge and behavior at unprecedented scale. We also gained loneliness in crowds, addiction by design, the collapse of shared truth, the monetization of attention, the erosion of privacy, the acceleration of everything to the point where nothing settles, the replacement of boredom with endless distraction, the death of context. In their world, they lost everything: the democratization of information, the long tail of culture, the ability to find your people across distance, the efficiency of digital coordination, the small miracles of instant answers, the economic dynamism of frictionless exchange. They also lost algorithmic radicalization, infinite comparison, the quantification of self-worth, the collapse of local retail, the panopticon of perfect surveillance, the exhaustion of infinite content, the erasure of contemplation. Neither world is better. That's not the point. The point is that in 1995, the Internet seemed inevitable, essential, the natural next step. Its absence seems unthinkable now, dystopian, a world diminished. But in their world, walking through their cities, sitting in their quiet evenings, building their slower connections, they don't feel diminished, they feel normal. They built a different world, not a worse one. Their problems are different, not fewer. They work, they love, they struggle, they create. They're bored and fulfilled, connected and lonely, thriving and suffering in the ways humans always have. What they never wonder is what they're missing. We rarely wonder what we've lost. Both worlds teach the same lesson. Progress isn't a line, it's a trade. Every technology brings a world into being and destroys the one before it. The question isn't whether we chose correctly in 1995. The question is whether we're honest about what we chose and what that choice cost us. In their world, connection requires effort. Information requires patience. Entertainment requires selection. Community requires presence. In ours, everything is instant, infinite, always available. In theirs, they have friction. In ours, we have speed. Neither world knows which one needed saving. Ur Qualif. End.